Hello aspirants and welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this lecture, we will be looking at the sovereign green bonds. So what is the news all about? The news is about the weak demand for the sovereign green bonds in India. So we'll see what are bonds, what is specifically the sovereign green bonds, why is the demand so less, and at the same time, what is the way forward for it. So let's get started. First things first, what are bonds? Bond, if you see, are debt instruments. Debt instruments means it is just like a loan. There are two types of investment for borrowing and lending, that is equity instruments, debt instruments. Equity instruments, if you are investing in equity instruments, you have to give some amount of money, and against that you get some amount of equity, or let's say an equity share, which means an ownership in that particular company or a project. When it comes to debt instruments, when you give when you borrow or give money via debt instrument, there is no ownership that comes with it. It is just a fixed amount of return that you will get on it. For example, in Shark Tanks, many people come to ask for some investment. So they will ask, I want, let's say, 10 crore of investment for which I am ready to give 10% of the equity. Means what? You give me 10 crores, then 10% of my company is yours. So this is an equity instrument. This is the equity which they are selling. The other way to take funding is, you say, for example, if they're asking this, many times the sharks will say that, no, I won't be giving you entire 10 crore as equity. I will give you 5 crore for 5% of your company. The remaining 5 crore, I will give you at 12% interest rate. Means what? This 5 crore is like an equity for which they will get the 5% of share of the company. But this 5 crore is a debt. Means you have to repay it at a fixed interest rate. It is like a loan. So bonds are what? They are not equity instrument. They are debt instrument which will have a particular amount of rate of return on it. Right. Now, what are green bonds then? So see, bonds are debt instruments which are issued to raise funds for various projects, for various things. When these funds are raised through bonds specifically for green projects, then such bonds will be known as green bonds. So what are green projects? Green projects are the projects which reduces emissions of carbon dioxide, which reduces CO2 footprint, which is more sustainable environmentally, which enhances the climate. So anything, any project or investment which will be beneficial for the environment can be termed as a green project. And when you are investing money via a bond in such project, that bond is called as green bonds. Right. Now, what is the characteristic of a green bond? Meaning, how is green bond slightly different from any other bond? One specific thing is the area of investment. Investment will be specifically in green projects. Apart from that, what happens here is there is a term as green premium or greenium, which we will come to understand what this is. So in green bonds, what happens is there are lower yields. In bond, we don't use profit or interest rate. We rather called them as yields, the bond yield. So the green bonds have lower bond yields as compared to the conventional bonds. Fair enough. So because the bond yield is less, understand this, for loan it is interest, for bond it is yield. Since the yield is less, that means the borrower can borrow money at a low interest rate. So that really helps, the cost of borrowing reduces. So why will someone want to invest in bonds with low yields? Because they may get a surety that this investment is being used in green projects. So there will be environmental lovers, of course, but at the same time, various companies have green obligations as well, meaning they have to invest XYZ amount in green projects. So they can use these green bonds also to show that they have invested that much amount in green projects. So that is their benefit which is there. Plus the borrower is getting money at a lower cost. So since the lower cost is there, this is beneficial for the borrower. Now, as I said, the yield is lower than the conventional bond. So basically, the conventional bond yield minus the green bond yield. This is the difference between conventional bond yield and green bond yield, which is the benefit to the borrower. This is the amount by which the borrowing cost will be reduced. This difference is known as green premium, or in other words also known as greenium. And hence it will be attractive for the borrower to utilize this method. At the same time, people will be ready to invest because they have certain obligations or they want environmentally sustainable projects, etc. Right? So if we ask about what is in there for the investors, they are sure that it is invested in green projects. They will seek stable and long-term returns. At the same time, they may also have some internal and external obligation of spending in green projects. I hope that is absolutely clear. Now, why is so? If the cost of borrowing is less, if there are certain obligations also which is present, then why are investors not excited? Because of one major reason is low greenium. Means the borrower is getting reduced cost of borrowing, but the amount with which the cost is reduced is not very high. What is the difference? So if you look at the developed countries, there is a difference of 7 to 8 basis points, whereas in India the difference is just 2 to 3 basis points. That means the interest rate is here is less than by 0.7 to 0.07 to 0.08%, whereas in India the difference in yield is around 0.02 to 0.03%. So it is less than, one third less than what it is there in other countries. So it's a very low amount. Plus what happens is the sizes of such bonds, the investment is also which is very less, and it sort of lacks the ecosystem. The presence of ecosystem is not there. Why the ecosystem has not developed in India? The ecosystem which why it has not developed in India is because what is happening in India, when you take a bond, generally in India, the bond holders are waiting up to the maturity period of that bond. Means they are not trading on the secondary platform and among each other. They are waiting for the bond to mature and then only redeeming it. Since so the bond period is of 5 years, you wait for the entire 5 year instead of encashing it in between. So since you are waiting for the entire 5 years, the bond is kept aside. It is not in the secondary market, so it is not much traded. That is why no much demand is created. Hence there is no growth in the bond market, specifically the green bond market of India. So what can be the way forward? Also, we are talking about not just green bond, but the sovereign green bond. So green bond, we understood. What is sovereign green bond? Sovereign green bond means the green bond that is issued by a sovereign, means a country, a nation. So when Indian government will issue the green bonds, it will be known as sovereign green bonds. That is exactly what we are talking about. Now, what can be the way forward? So what can happen is, once the green bond is issued, one interest of the investors was that it is invested in green projects. So when you are buying green bonds, the government, the issuer, should very quickly tell where your money is invested, what impact it is generating, etc., etc., which makes you happy, which gives a sense of fulfillment, which makes you to invest more and more in such green bonds. But that post issuance allocation and impact report, okay, where that money has been invested, where has been it allocated, what has been the impact, all those things, this will interest the investor. All those things are not being released fast. It is like your UPSC answer key for prelims. You give the prelims, the answer sheet key should be ready then and there, or maybe the next day, but it doesn't come till over a year. So that is the case here as well. So the interest goes off. Since the interest goes on, the heat or the urgency or the attraction is not much created over there. At the same time, one more thing, if you take for example the Department of Economic Affairs, now this is the department which deals with providing all these reports, etc. It has not yet came up with the report for the allocation that was made in 2023-24, and we are about to start 25-26. So it is going to be almost over 2 financial year wherein we have not yet come up with the data for the allocation that has previously happened. At this, so what the way forward, we are basically looking at the problem. So the way forward will be to resolve this. So bring these reports of allocation as well as impact as soon as possible. Another interesting thing that can be done is a combination of green, that is climate related, plus social, society related. You can merge these two as in order to make it more attractive, because sometimes it can so happen the green project is there but the benefit for the investor is not much. The benefit for the investor can come up with certain other projects, but that project cannot be something which is related to a sin good or which is related to a high carbon dioxide emission, etc., because then it will not be green at all. But there can be certain projects which are good in, let's say, social index, means helping the society, solving problem of the society, and are very low on carbon index and are sort of not exactly green but at the same time not polluting. So you can add such social projects along with the green project and come up with a term of projects that are sustainable, and hence increase the ambit of your projects, which will help us to get better returns, which will attract more people to invest in sustainable bonds, a part of which will be the green bond as well. So this kind of multifaceted solution can be thought of by the government of India to come up with such. The other thing could be, we saw that the greenium is very low, so the greenium can also be increased. This will help to reduce, this will not help the investor as such, it will not attract the investor, but at least it will help reduce the cost. It will help to reduce the cost of borrowing. And what can help the investor? The report, the impact, etc. When you publicize that, when you invest in something and you see the benefit of that, it gives a sense of satisfaction which will help you further be attracted to invest more in green bonds. Thank you.